Tyson packs 20% of the nation's beef, pork, and chicken that Americans eat in the whole nation. They need to keep producing food for the nation and not shut down. But then, how do they also keep their workers safe?
So, Anna, we are first going to talk about the current time by going back in time to a story that you reported several months ago at this point, really at the beginning of all the coronavirus news as it was happening in the US, but more so in China, how exports from the US were being affected by the situation in China. And I just wonder now, can we check in a little bit now on what was going on then and the differences now?
Yeah, I started hearing rumblings in the agricultural community that things were not going well. And so when I started looking into it, I found that the seafood industry was really particularly being hit hard. Their export market to China was just decimated. All types of things that would usually go overseas to China were just not going because none of the restaurants were open over there and nobody needed those products. We also found that shipping was really being affected. Dozens of ships that would travel all the way from China all the way to California and Washington and Oregon were not making those routes. And then I also found out that the cherry industry was extremely worried and still is worried, Scott, that they are not having the ability to export their cherries across the seas. They usually ship about 1 million boxes of cherries to China, and that's all done by air. And so they're really concerned that there weren't enough planes to put cherries on, and they're still concerned.
So that was then, and let's talk a little bit more about what's going on in some of the supply chain right now, specifically about processing plants. We've seen some issues about workers getting sick in a Tyson plant in the Tri-Cities region and a Apple operation in the Wenatchee area. What's going on there?
So there's Tyson Foods is the beef packing plant near Pasco, Washington. It has nearly 100 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Stemilt Ag Services up in East Wenatchee has 36 confirmed cases so far. Now those numbers are changing rapidly, but both companies are grappling with how to protect their other workers and to contain the spread of the coronavirus. They're really worried that they're an essential business, that they need to keep producing food for the nation and not shut down. But then how do they also keep their workers safe? They're doing things like extra cleaning. They're putting up clear dividers and partitions between workers to try to keep them more separated. But it's hard to know if this will contain the spread of the coronavirus within these plants. Tyson packs 20% of the nation's beef, pork, and chicken that Americans eat in the whole nation. And Stemilt has a packing facility in Yakima with more than 900 workers that work there simultaneously during a couple shifts. So it's really hard to just separate that many workers when they're all together.
You can see more on these and other topics at our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe, stay home, stay healthy out there in the unique Northwest.